Welcome to the AJS TV channel. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by one of the biggest Aston Villa social media influencers, if you want to call it that, Dan Bardell, the host of, well, it used to be the Villa View. It's now
Yeah.
1874. Is it the Villa channel? I forget what it is,
Oh,
that,
no,
isn't it?
I forget what the whole blurb is, but let's just call it
Yeah.
1874.
Yeah, but I've known about him for a very long time. He's worked with TalkSport, Sky Sports. You've been around everywhere, and I'm just delighted to have you here. Welcome.
No, mate, thank you for having me. Be looking forward to talking Villa with you.
Oh yeah, I love it. And I'm going to start straight away and always ask this question: why do you support your club, which is thankfully today Aston Villa?
There was so I'm 38, so I reckon 92 would have been the first time I went to the Villa, and I've pretty much had a season ticket ever since. So my dad has supported Villa his entire life. His parents weren't into football, so it wasn't one of those things that's come down from generation to generation. It's just my dad supported Villa as a kid, and pretty much as soon as I showed like any form of interest in football, he took me to the Villa straight away because he wanted it to be something that we could do together, and we've never really stopped going ever since that happened. And at the time as well, there was a kid in my class called Nathan Teal, and that was Sean Teal's son. So I used
Oh
to see
wow.
Sean Teal in the playground. I still see Sean around Villa and stuff now, and with stuff that I do, I bump into him quite a lot. But that probably obviously my dad was a Villa fan, and then being in the same class as Sean Teal's son, they were probably the two things that happened at the same time that really got me fascinated by Villa and got me interested in it.
Yeah, I resonate with that a lot because my dad is also an Aston Villa fan. That's how I got into the sports. I think a lot of people go through that kind of route, and growing up, it's just going down the Villa. It's amazing. Absolutely.
Yeah, I genuinely mean this. Like as a kid, I didn't even know Birmingham City fans, West Brom fans. Everyone I knew
Yeah,
supported Villa.
Villa.
That was just the way it was. The only time I ever really discovered Birmingham City fans was when I would have been about 16, 17 when we first played them in the Premier League, that incoming game.
Mm.
That was the first time I remember Birmingham
Oh,
City
what a
fans kind
start,
of
by the way.
coming out of the woodwork. But honestly, my whole life growing up, just surrounded by Villa and Villa fans, really.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a rough way to get into it with like Enkelman, that
Oh
whole thing.
yeah,
I was a little bit young for that, but obviously everyone knows all about that game.
yeah. Not a great day.
No, not amazing, not amazing. How did your career in the football world begin? Because obviously you've done pretty much everything. How did that all start?
So 2000 and I'd been doing like blogging, mate. Blogging. There was a lot of blogging going on back in those times for a while, and I had a Twitter account, and I just tweet my blogs basically out there. And then I ended up doing a few blogs for the Birmingham Mail at the time. So I'm probably about 30 at this point
Mm,
doing that. And then the Villa View was obviously started by Dan Rollinson and Matt Lynch, and I looked at it and thought they were just doing fan cams at the time, and I thought I quite fancy getting involved in that. So I just pinged them a message. I knew Matt Lynch as well because he was blogging for the same website, a Villa fan, as I was at that time. And luckily they said yes and got me on board. And it kind of went from there, really. You kind of hit these mini little landmarks or complete these kind of mini steps as you go through. So, to cut a long story short, jumped from the Villa View to doing the Athletics Villa podcast with Greg Evans, which obviously got me into a big media company like the Athletic. They just started at that point, and then from there did well there, and ended up hosting their England stuff with kind of alternating with Mark Chapman, which was absolutely nuts at the time because obviously Chappers
yeah.
is Chappers and I'm me, and I'd never really done any mainstream media at that point. And then that was when it really started to take off, like the odd appearance. COVID obviously hit, so like the odd appearance on TalkSport, the odd appearance on COVID, just from home doing stuff, and it's kind of just spiraled from there. And each year I seem to get more stuff and kind of become more recognized and get more work. And it literally has been, the last few years has been absolutely crazy. If you'd have told me a few years ago some of the stuff that I would have done, I probably wouldn't have believed. Just an hour just freelance in the media world, talking about football, not just Villa. Obviously there is a lot of Villa there, but I think at this point I've probably worked for everyone that you could possibly work for in
Mm.
the UK. Like the bulk of my work's with Talksport and Sky, but I've just started at the Guardian now as well, doing the Football Weekly, which I absolutely love as well. And yeah, just really, it's just been an incredible journey. But you have to have help and stuff along the way, and
Of
meet
course.
good people. And I've been lucky that I've met a lot of brilliant people, had a little bit of help, and I've managed to climb up the ladder.
Was that jump scary? Like you go from, you said you're talking to people like Mark Chapman, like to go
Yeah,
from how you started to that. I must have been at least a little bit scary. I mean, I find it scary.
I'm not really someone that's ever got nervous, because ultimately you have to kind of have belief that you are good enough. And I'd been pushing at the
Mm,
Athletic to do more stuff, but I never envisaged that they'd just suddenly chuck me in doing
mm,
the England stuff. And because of who Mark Chapman is, like I did a couple with him, but because he's busy doing other stuff in a tournament, I probably ended up hosting about 70-80% of those shows through that summer. But luckily I did well. But I was a bit nervous the first time I did it, because you're kind of on with what people would perceive as proper serious football
mm,
journalists. The
yeah.
Athletic had picked off all the best journalists in the UK at that point. So I was doing podcasts with, it was a daily show. So,
Mm,
I'm doing stuff with people I've never met, because it's COVID, people who are like some of the most respected journalists that there is. And I've kind of come from this YouTube background, having never really done any stuff in TV and radio at that point. But I've never really come across anyone who isn't nice, isn't helpful, is horrible. Like those things haven't really ever happened to
mm,
me. So they were so good with me. They gave me a little bit of space to learn whilst I was doing it. And I did a couple with Chappers, and even just those couple with him, just watching how he works, how he asks questions, how you can tell he's listening to everyone, and he just makes it look so easy. If you watch anything he ever does, whether it be a podcast, listen to him on the radio, or watch him, presenting live football like he was yesterday, he's so relaxed, and he makes everything look really easy. And I think probably those couple of times I maybe took a couple of things away from him that have stood me in good stead as time's gone on.
yeah. I was gonna say, I bet you learned a great deal. Working with people like that, it would have
Yeah,
been
like,
absolutely
yeah.
amazing.
There's so many like legends, I would do say, out there, and you do pick things up. Doing a lot of work with because obviously, sometimes I present stuff, sometimes I'm the person that's giving my opinion, so more of a panelist or a pundit. I'm doing a lot of work with Adi Oladipo at the moment at
Mm,
Talksport. He does a lot of boxing stuff, but also heavily into football as well. I've been doing stuff with him over the last six months at Talksport, and again, just a natural, someone that you can't really fail to learn off. So I'm quite lucky, because I think I can do both. That helps with the work as well, because I can do the presenting side, but I can also be the person that gives your opinion. So still learning stuff now, and still,
mm.
although I think I've done quite well, not 100% where I would like to be. I still have ambitions and things that I would like to tick off and do. But working with great people and just learning all these little bits and pieces, it will always help.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're doing something right because I see your face everywhere. I think you
Yeah,
do a very good job
it's
of what
more
you
the
do.
voice as well, isn't it? People probably sometimes will hear me on the radio and not know what I look like. I've had a few people say, "Oh God," they say what I look like and think, "Oh, you sounded like I thought you were a 50, 60-year-old man from hearing your voice." But no, the voice is quite recognisable. But I do have stages where it feels like I probably pop up
Mm,
in too many places, and people are probably sick of me.
mm. I do think you represent Villa quite well because I know, like, I like Gabby Agbonlahor, but obviously his opinions sometimes on Talksport. I mean, we
He
all
knows
know
what
what
he's
they can
doing.
be.
He knows
Yeah,
what
I
he's
think he
doing.
does. Right, he does know what he's doing. But no, you come across really well. And I think whenever you talk about Villa, you always talk about it in the right way, and I think it's really good.
I
Yeah,
never
I do
wanted to
believe it.
be like Arsenal fan TV. I don't want to
TV, yeah,
sit
yeah.
here and slate them, but I didn't like that style, and that was one thing Rollo and I, when we were doing the Villa View, we said we're never gonna be like that. We're never gonna come out and completely rip people apart and try and do like over the top reactions for clicks. Always try to be quite measured and not hammer anyone doing the show. So I
Mm.
always try and be quite measured when I'm talking about Villa. My Twitter's probably less measured at the moment with some of my opinions on the off the field stuff, but generally when I'm doing a show, I try and be quite measured.
Yeah, I think some people like the realism at the end of the day. Like people will click on AFTV stuff because it's funny and
Yeah.
they're very popular at what they do. But people also appreciate realism, and I think being as real as you can talking about Villa is what people like. You know.
Yeah, I mean, Gabby, I see Gabby quite a lot and speak to him quite a lot. Like he's such a funny guy, and I think even he'd say himself he never expected to do what he's ended up doing after football. He did his badges and stuff. I think he really
Mm,
wanted to be a coach when he came out of football, but he stumbled upon this media career and done really well for himself. He's out obviously doing stuff for the Euros in Germany at the moment. Just a funny guy, and someone you talk about people being good with you and people being helpful with you. Gabby has been great with me whenever I've crossed paths with him. He's always been really helpful and offered advice and always come and had a chat with me. Just someone who's been a really nice guy when I've encountered him.
mm. Well, like I said, he has his jokes, and I remember when Blues went down, he did that post,
Ah,
like drinking. Oh, mate,
he
I
can
love it.
do that. He's already he's already there. He's made it. He's already at the top of his game in the
Yeah,
in the pundit world, so he can do stuff like that.
yeah, I did find that very funny. I did mention it briefly, but you did have a rebrand. So talk to me about that. How come you changed from like the Villa View and like you do obviously lots of live streams now. So talk to me about that rebrand. Like, what did you do?
So you'll know there's a lot of Villa podcasts, a lot of Villa shows out there, and I think everyone will always have their favourites. There'll be people that do like what I do, and there'll be people that don't like me, and that's fine because it will be the same for everyone else that's doing Villa content. So I felt like maybe the space was getting a bit the same. Everyone kind of doing a little bit of the same thing. So I separate like Villa on tour from that, because he's got a unique thing that he does that really works. I love
Mm,
Max and Simon, and what they do is brilliant, and the way they cover things is absolutely superb. So that I kind of separate them from that because I think what they do is quite niche and quite different. But I felt like the rest of the space, it was all becoming a little bit the same. That's not to knock anyone, but
yeah.
you're all talking about the same things, aren't you? So with the Villa View was something that I tended to do with mates as kind of a hobby. But then I was doing all this other media stuff, working for all these companies. So I felt like in a way maybe that wasn't doing me any favors with the media career. So I decided to change it up because Greg and I had been doing the 1874 podcast with the Athletic, and then we put it on the Villa View when it finished at the Athletic, and we were doing that show within the Villa View. So I felt at that time it just made sense to change everything and put it all around 1874. The Villa View had been around, for 6-7 years, and we'd never really changed the scope of it or the description of what we were doing. But we weren't really doing fan cams anymore because we stopped doing that after COVID. So I just felt it was time to change it round a bit. And now, rather than do it with, I mean, these people are my mates, but rather than do it with my mates, do it with journalists, do it with people that are on the radio and television, and just try and make it a little bit different and try and be a bit more consistent with the output in terms of the shows that we put out, because it all felt a little bit ad hoc before.
Mm,
So obviously getting to know people, like working at Sky, getting to know Dave Reed, doing the previews with him. He's a Sky Sports journalists are doing that with him, and then Greg and Jacob at the Athletic doing other shows with them through the week. So the main reason was because I felt like it was maybe not holding me back, but I kind of felt like I'd moved away from fan media myself. So I wanted to reflect that in the Villa View, and then changed it to 1874 because I felt I couldn't do that without a name change. And luckily, got a couple of people behind the scenes who are more tech savvy than me, and they managed to do it.
yeah. I was gonna say it's a little bit more professional now, and being professional is definitely not a bad thing at
I
all.
mean, it's supposed to be more professional, but we have our fair share of tech issues. Still sometimes we'll start doing it and it's not working, and we're not going out, or we'll have
Mm,
sound issues and stuff. So this stuff does happen. But yeah, generally I think the content that we put out is probably a little bit more mature, for want of a better word.
mm. Yeah, I think wanting to stand out is not a bad thing at all. I think you are right. A lot of like fan accounts do the same thing.
Yeah,
Even I try and put out my content differently to how other people do it because you don't want to appear in the background. You don't want to blend in with others. So I fully respect the idea of trying to do things differently, trying to do things in a more professional manner, like I said.
I'm quite
Yeah,
lucky
it's
as
very
well,
good.
aren't I? Really, because well, probably the first person that was doing that kind of thing around Villa. So you obviously get a little bit of a like a leg up because you're the first person to do something. So we built kind of a following before anyone else was doing
Mhm.
that kind of thing. And then I'm lucky that I've become fairly recognizable because I've ended up doing the other stuff that I've done. So it's kind of trying to take advantage of that stuff, if that makes sense, those things that I've just mentioned.
Yeah, they all it kind of helps each other really, because like if you go on and people see you on Talksport, if people are interested in what you say, they'll go on click the other things that you do, and it all kind of helps each other really. It'll everything that you do benefits other things that you do.
And there's a good community as well. Like the people that do it, like we all get on. The most of us are all friends that end up doing this stuff. So we've all become friends over the years and quite close and look out for each other and help each other out. I'll quite happily jump on Rollo's Claret and Blue podcast, or they did a live show the other week. I'll quite happily go on
Yeah,
that and be involved in that. So people like Rollo, myself, Ty, Omar. I'm going to leave people out, Max and Simon. Like we all get on, and we're all friends, and we're all close.
yeah, yeah. It does look like a very good like community that you've got.
Yeah,
Very good. Moving the conversation ahead towards Aston Villa, what have you made of Unai Emery and his whole era at Aston Villa? It's been quite a bit of time now, so what do you think?
yeah. Look, so lucky to have managed to get Unai Emery through the door. I think once he came in at first, maybe there was a little bit of the Arsenal time that was playing in Villa fans' minds. I know when I first got wind of it, it felt like it was out of him and Pochettino at the time in my head as to who they might go for. And I remember thinking at first that I preferred Pochettino. That would be who I'd want to come in. But then, got wind that it was very quickly that it was looking like it was going to be Unai Emery. And then you start to read into these things and watch videos, and you actually think about things properly and think about what he'd done at teams like Sevilla, Villarreal, and you realise that okay, this is a serious manager, and I think the speed in which he's done things at Villa doesn't get the credit in the wider media that it deserves. And I suppose that's one good thing for me being in the media is that I can put these viewpoints across and try and hammer home how well Aston Villa and how well Unai Emery have done over the last year and a half. Because even the fact that he qualified us for Europe in his first, 2/3 of a season is absolutely incredible. Finishing seventh, a point off Brighton, who'd had a brilliant season. I don't think that gets the credit that it
Mm.
deserves. But then in his first full season, to get Villa into Champions League football, for Villa to have finished fourth in the Premier League, it's a monumental achievement from him and the coaching staff and everyone at the football club and the players. I think already, in a year and a half, is it a year and a half now? I think we can say he's been at Villa. He's the best manager I've seen at Villa, and this is the best football team that I've
Yeah.
seen at Villa. What they've achieved, I know they've not won anything, but what they've done in 18 months, I really don't think it gets the credit that it deserves.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think, some people forget how bad we were under Gerrard.
Oh, I don't forget. I
Like,
still have nightmares about it.
but obviously for like non-Villa fans, it's pretty much the same squad that he got. I mean, it's the same season under Gerrard that we were basically battling relegation by the time he was
Mm.
sacked. And he turned us from that to a European conference side is just outstanding. The fact he did it with what a couple players he brought in January, it's the same squad. I think it's unbelievable. A lot
Yeah,
of people talk about phases in terms of managers. Oh, our managers in phase two and phase three. We didn't have phases with Uno. Like he took us
no.
over and he completely changed everything. And he should
If we
get
did have
blamed for
phases,
that.
he skipped through a few. He definitely bypassed a few phases, didn't he?
Oh, definitely, definitely. And to be honest, I did expect a bit of a fall off after we finished seventh place. My expectations were, as long as we were top half, I was happy. I'd never in my wildest dreams thought we'd get top four. It was
Really?
only in, or yeah, it was only until we'd been like challenging towards the top for like first half of the season. We were doing incredibly well. But if you'd have asked me in the summer of that year, I thought we might we might focus on the Conference League, maybe even win that, but then we could falter around mid-table. Even that wouldn't have been a problem to me. But the fact we got to a semi-final of the European Cup and we got top four is just unbelievable.
I had
Genuinely.
us down as fifth at the start of
Really?
that season in stuff that I did. Yeah, because what I thought was that we had a bit of momentum. Like you said, he hadn't really brought in any of his own players. So Duran would have come anyway, and obviously Moreno was an Emery pickup, and he was a big part of why we ended up finishing seventh. But we had that momentum. I felt like I thought Tottenham would struggle, but they obviously didn't really until the end. And I thought Chelsea aren't gonna be chasing Champions League football. There's just too much upheaval there. A lot's happened. I don't think they're going to be challenging for Champions League football. I thought Newcastle would find it hard with Champions League as well, albeit I probably didn't think they'd find it as hard as they did end up finding it. So I thought there was a massive opportunity to finish top five. I did think fifth, and just hope that the coefficient would see that through and it would end up being Champions League football. But for fifth not to have been Champions League and us to have actually finished fourth and negotiated a long Europa Conference League campaign, which ultimately, we fell short, but we were running on absolute empty at the end
Oh
of the
yeah,
season.
the gas tank was so
Yeah,
low at
it
that
was
point.
finished, wasn't it? There was
Yeah.
nothing left, but we did enough, and we got fourth, which to me was more important than
Mm.
winning the Conference League. I think at the start of the season, we obviously had that first game where we lost 5-1, got absolutely thumped. You just lost Buendia for the season. You've just lost Tyrone Mings for the season. But even then, I just thought under Emery, even in that first half of the season, whenever we had a bad result, we would bounce back, wouldn't we? And that was a theme throughout the whole season. If we had a bad result, we wouldn't go on a bad run. We'd still pick up points. We'd still win games when we didn't necessarily play well, and that was massive going through the season. I thought so. Yeah, I honestly fancied us for top five at the start of the season, and credit to them, they managed to do it.
Yeah, I remember very vividly after we got hammered by Newcastle on the opening day, Sir Alex Ferguson was praised Villa, and not many people really understood, what he was really talking about. I think, it's hard to ignore a result, especially like that. But if you can look at what Unai had done with Villa before, obviously the start of that season, and there were parts of the game. I know defensively it wasn't great, and Tyrone Mings did get injured during that game, but he saw something in that performance in Unai Emery, and he got criticism for that at the time. I
Yeah,
remember very vividly, and I think that's aged brilliantly. It was a
yeah.
big statement to make after a result like that. But I
I
mean, it's
watched
one of the.
99 recently. Have you watched it on Amazon?
I
The
haven't actually.
documentary about 98,
Yeah.
99 season when they won the treble, like incredible, like, and what foresight from him to have said that at the start of the season. The bloke is obviously a complete genius. But I thought we played well. I thought we played okay that day. I didn't think, obviously, it wasn't nice to get hammered, but I thought there was a lot of positives actually there. And I think the Tyrone Mings injury that day was a massive reason why we conceded 5,
Mm,
because it meant Torres. The plan was never to play Torres at left centre back that early. The
mm,
plan was always going to be to phase him in gradually. And when he did play, he was going to play left back with Mings and Konsa as the centre back pairing. And obviously, we'd kept a lot of clean sheets the season before
mm,
with that pairing. So it just meant that we had to do something more quickly than we were ready for. And it was a baptism of fire for Pau Torres, and he struggled. But as the season went on, what a footballer! And although we weren't brilliant defensively in the run kind of just before Christmas, really, we were never conceding more than one goal. I know we weren't keeping clean
mm.
sheets, but we were never conceding more than one goal, and he was a massive part of why we had just control of so many games. So I do think that first game wasn't really a fair reflection of what was going to come, because they got forced into something early, and it was always going to take a little bit of time to get going that season.
Mm. Like, even when you don't have injury issues, playing a high line away at Newcastle is never going to be easy anyway. So
No,
on top of
they were
that, we
really
have.
good that day as well. Like
Oh, they were
everything they
very
touched
good.
went in, didn't
Yeah,
it? Really.
yeah. But I don't think many Villa fans panicked after that result anyway. After what we've seen under Unai, I just saw
That's
a
not what
lot
I
of
remember on
people.
social media.
Well, again, okay, you can look at Twitter, but the way I looked at it was, we've seen, 2/3 of a season with Unai Emery. It's one game against a very good team. Like, yeah, that
Won the
sometimes
next one.
bad things are gonna happen. Yeah, exactly. And we bounced back brilliantly after that game,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
finished fourth place. What did you make of our Europa Conference campaign?
So Obviously I've mentioned my age a few times, which I seem to do a lot, and I don't know why I do it, because obviously I'm letting everyone know that I'm 38 and not far off
Mm,
40. But I was, desperate for us to win a trophy, because when I was a kid, and we won a cup in '94, we won a cup in '96, we got to an FA Cup final in 2000, albeit we didn't win it. So through my childhood, I was kind of getting accustomed to us being in cup finals, and I just thought, this is just what happens. This is every few years we'll get to a cup final and we'll either win it or we'll lose it. Little did I know that was not what happens, and we got to the final in 2010 was the next time after 2000,
it
cup,
was.
the
Yeah, it was.
Carling Cup, I think it was called at the
Carling
time. So
Cup, yeah.
the League Cup final, and then was it 2014 or
15. It is
15?
15, yeah.
We got thumped by Arsenal, and
Arsenal.
then Dean Smith 2020. Obviously, we had playoff Wembley trips a couple of times, but really we've not been regulars in competing for silverware at all. And ultimately, we've won nothing since '96. But as the season went on, it was becoming apparent it was going to be a struggle to manage both. Although up until probably the Lille games, I would say we'd managed doing both really, really well through the season. But we started to really suffer with the injuries, and when you're playing Thursday, Sunday, that load becomes really, really difficult for the players. I think you get a lot of mental fatigue and you get a lot of physical fatigue. So as the season went on, for me, the Europa Conference League, sorry, became less important because, in my opinion, even just finishing fourth once and having one season of Champions League football, it does more for you as a football club than winning a trophy will. And look, I know fans want memories, and memories are important, and I thoroughly believe that. But for sustainability of a football club and building a football club, finishing fourth would do more for Villa than winning the Europa Conference League. And ultimately, there was a point where I was going on the radio. A lot of people were saying, "What would you rather have, fourth or the Conference League?" And at the start of the season, I would have said Conference League. But as the season went on, fourth was everything to me. And ultimately, we didn't win the Conference League anyway. But it was great to be back in Europe. The Villa fans that go away every week and that were going away during the Championship every single week, putting in real hard yards, watching absolute dross at times.
Yeah.
The times they've had on that European adventure, going to some proper weird, obscure places. Those people, I think, really, really deserve those trips and
Mm.
deserve to be rewarded. And a lot of other people I know have been on some of those trips as well. And I think I think what the Conference League has done is it sets us up nicely for the Champions League, because at least we've got that little bit of European experience under our belt now. I felt when we came up in the quarterfinals and the semi-finals, although probably we have a better team on paper than Lille and Olympiacos, I think that experience of being in knockout football in Europe, none of our players really had it. And I think that showed. I think we didn't manage ties very, very, very well across the two legs. The Lille home leg, for example, you're 2-0 up and then you concede a really crucial goal with 10 minutes left, and it completely changes the tie. So although Unai Emery's got this massive experience, the people that were on the pitch, I felt, were suffering a little bit because they didn't have that experience. I think that will help us going into the Champions League, and I think that's the advantage we've got over Newcastle, is at least we've got that season of European experience under our belt before we enter the Champions League. And Newcastle didn't really have that, did they? A real baptism
No.
of fire, being put in a group of death. I also think
Yeah.
the new format will be good for us as well, because you've just got to finish in the top 24 out of 36 teams, and if you do that, you get another two-legged tie and a chance to get to the last 16. I think that will suit us, and I'd back us to be good enough to get in that top 24.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the new format in terms of, it's taken it away from its history and its roots. It does
Yeah,
kind of feel like a super league. In terms of Villa, it will be more beneficial to have it. But
you got 4
yeah,
home games, haven't you? And
yeah, yeah.
you're gonna play a couple of really big teams in there. Villa are going to be going somewhere like Madrid, Paris, Munich.
Mm,
There's going to be somewhere like that thrown in, which again is going to be excellent for those people that have been to Barnsley, Wigan, wherever. They're now going to get to go to the top stadiums in the world. So
yeah.
that new format will help in that regard. But we've got the perfect manager for this, because he's managed us, Villarreal, who are not a stereotypical Champions League team, to a
Got them to
semi-final of the
semi-final. Yeah, he
Champions.
did. He did.
Now,
Yeah.
I actually think there's every chance that could happen to us with that manager. I really do believe that.
Mm. I think you're spot on with the the point you made that we were in a European competition before the Champions League. I feel like if we weren't and we were just thrown into the Champions League, I think we would really struggle
Yeah, it'd be
because,
hard.
like you said, it'd be a lot harder. And even with this new format, you know, I don't really think we would have done very well. But now we've had that experience. We got quite far in a competition. You know, I don't think we played very well against Lille. I think we limped through that. To be honest,
Yeah, of
Emmy kind of
course.
saved us. And Olympiacos thoroughly deserved to beat us very easily over two legs. But that experience from that, that whole season of that competition, I think will definitely help us.
I
And
also think the one-off, like if you're asking if Villa have a one-off game at Villa Park or even away, in that, like coming up against a big team,
mm,
I think we've beaten Manchester City at Villa Park,
mm,
one of the best teams on the planet. We've beaten Arsenal twice, so in that kind of in a one-off tie-up against the big teams. I think there's anything for us to really fear because I would back Emery to come up with a game plan, and that's what it's going to be, isn't it? In that group stage, it's your one-off ties, see what you
yeah.
can do. And again, I think that aspect of it might suit us better than being in a group of four and trying to negotiate 6 games home and away. I honestly think this new format will help.
Do you have any expectations for the Champions League? Do you expect us to, finish in the top places? Like, what are your expectations?
I'd back us to get to the last 16. So, like I say, you've just got the top 8, isn't it? I've played a lot of Football Manager, so I know about this format. The top 8 go through, don't they? And then from
Yeah,
9
yeah,
down
they
to
do.
24, you play a two-legged tie against the same team. So you've just got to finish in the top 24. I wouldn't expect us to be finishing in the top 8, but the top 24, yes. And then can you negotiate a two-legged tie, which now we've got some experience of. So that's good. So I don't have like a massive expectation. I think Villa fans have just got to treat it as this could be the only time. I don't think it will be, but this could be the only time that this ever happens. Just enjoy it. Go into it with absolutely no expectations whatsoever. Enjoy the fact that we're going to be playing against some huge teams. We enjoyed the Conference League, some of the teams that we got to come up against. This is going to be the real deal. And hearing that music at Villa Park, I've said many times, like my dad is 72, 73. Now he's not in the best of health that he's ever been. He struggles to negotiate, even going to the home games at times. We get him there everywhere. Like I say, he fails his fitness test every single week, but I still manage to get him to his seat
Yeah.
every single home game. So we've been going for over 30 years together now. It did not feel like I would ever see Villa Park host Champions League football with my dad, and I'm going to get to see that next season. So I actually find it quite emotional. When I hear that Champions League music at Villa Park, the first game, and I'm hoping that I'll get to go to some of the aways as well, because it's it's a massive opportunity. It's a one-off. It is now. I'm even hoping with work I might be able to swindle something, but that's probably a story for another day. But, you'll feel the same. Hearing that Champions League music at
Oh, of
Villa
course.
Park, it's not something that was on the horizon 5 years ago. It's not something that was
Yeah.
on. The
Mate,
last time I dreamed of it was O'Neill, and that was a long time ago.
I remember losing 3-0 to Wigan Athletic in the Championship, being bottom half, thinking, like, how low are we gonna sink?
Yeah,
And now
horrible,
look where
wasn't
we
it?
are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
turnaround's been
Um.
incredible.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I would like to see, look, a trophy in my time. I'm 24 years old. I've never seen my club lift a trophy. I was
Yeah,
gutted that we didn't win the Conference League. But at the same time, you got to be realistic. And yeah, listening to that Champions League music, I think will be amazing. Never thought, at least, being in the Championship, so, just a few years ago, I never thought I would see my team in the Champions League this early. I remember Tony Gia saying he'd try and get a project to
oh,
get us
mate.
into the Champions League within 5 years, and technically we did do it, but not with him.
I could tell you some
But yeah,
unbelievable stories about Dr. Tony when
I'm sure you could.
when he was there. Honestly, what a time! I look back on that time in my life and think that time was absolutely mental, because I used to speak to him nearly
Yeah.
every
Oh
single
wow.
day. He was an absolute nutcase. I was in a car with him and remember Villains Ho.
Oh
I was in,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I was in a
yeah.
car with them once, just driving around, talking to them ahead of the playoff semis against Middlesbrough, and I got to go to like see the Luke Roper kit before had been shown
Oh wow.
and been announced. I literally used to speak to him daily, and he just used to tell me everything that was happening. It was absolutely mental. I don't hear off him anymore for obvious reasons. Not heard off him for a few years,
Yeah.
but I hope he's doing okay. But yeah, that was a crazy time in my life.
Man, I'm sure you get to share those stories on your live stream. I'm sure people would love to hear them, by the
I
way,
should
because
I should do something with it really, because honestly, it was
yeah,
a ridiculous time.
yeah, it
Ridiculous
feels like a
time in my life.
pantomime if you
Yeah.
think back.
I felt like I was on the transfer committee. I mean, we did make some bad signings, so I don't want to take the blame for anything. But I
Yeah,
honestly
yeah, yeah,
would get asked my opinion on signings, and there were so many players that we tried to sign that we didn't sign that I was
yeah.
asked my opinion on during that time. Honestly, I felt like I was on the board at Villa in that time. It was ridiculous.
Crazy, crazy. Um, so with the news surrounding Villa with FFP and PSR, we've had actually news today about signing Dobbin as well
Yeah.
as Rogue Bunham going to Everton. What do you make of this whole situation with Villa right now?
The rules are a horror show. You know, they're
Mm,
not. The rules are not helpful to an upwardly mobile team like Villa, who really done the unthinkable and broke into the top four and qualified for the Champions League. You know, Newcastle obviously doing the same the season before. The rules aren't there to help those teams. The rules are there to hinder them. What I like about what we're doing at the moment, look, there's some tough decisions that are having to be made and some decisions that are being made that are not ideal, that if these rules weren't there, Villa wouldn't be taking some of the routes that they're taking. They're almost exploiting those rules now to pass, and I'm confident that come June the 30th, Villa will now pass the PSR regulations, and there'll be no point deductions. I know behind the scenes they they don't want points deductions at all. So what they're doing at the moment will alleviate that. You know, I'm sure like some of the stuff, the transfers that are happening, some of them wouldn't be happening at all. Some of them wouldn't be happening in the way that they're happening. But
mm,
Villa, Everton, Chelsea, they've all got together. You know, they're probably talking daily at this point, and they found a solution that's hopefully going to stop all those teams getting any kind of deductions or fines. But I think the fact that they're doing that just shows how ridiculous the rules are. And the bit that annoys me more than anything is you're rewarded for selling homegrown players, which is completely the
mm,
anti of what football fans want to see. And football should always be about what the fans want. It should be driven by that. So Nassef Suarez is everything he said about managing spreadsheets, not managing a football team. You know, that he's absolutely correct. And Villa obviously tried to get the rules changed by 30 million, I think it was.
yeah, yeah, I saw that. Yeah, we got
And
rejected.
my assumption is
Yeah.
there was a 30 million hole that Villa needed to fill. And what they're doing at the moment, it will fill that, because they buy Matson, they put him on a 6-year contract. You know, that probably won't even be ratified until July the 1st. But even if it isn't, it's spread across 6 years. It's the selling, which they're all doing. You get that
Mm.
on the book straight away, and Villa are having to make some difficult decisions, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complete circus. If teams are having to do this, surely there's something that needs to be changed. Like,
Yeah,
it's that
it's a
simple.
joke. It's a joke. I
Yeah.
obviously worked for Sky in January, you know, and every other window I've done has been like manic. There's all sorts going on. Stuff changes daily. Stuff changes hourly. There's nothing happening
Mm.
in January because teams couldn't do anything because of
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah,
financial
yeah.
constraints. Like literally nobody was buying anyone, and we were coming in and we were like, "Oh, what are we going to talk about today?" Because we spoke about that yesterday. It was a difficult time to
Yeah,
broadcast as well. That was, it didn't make that window very fun.
yeah. No, it's killing the sport almost, you know, when teams
It
are
will
having to
change
do this
as
type
well.
of thing.
That's the stupid thing. In a
Yeah.
few years' time, it won't be like this. And you know, then
Mm,
at the time when we're probably at the top end of what we can do, we haven't been able
mm,
to exploit anything or take advantage of the fact that we've qualified for the Champions League. And Newcastle had the same last year, and it's not right. You know, you deserve the chance to try and get yourselves up
mm,
to the level of these elite teams that have been there for a long time, and the rules stop you from doing that, however well you're doing.
mm. Yeah, I remember some Villa fans, online were very critical of the fact that we kind of supported Man City in their bid against the Premier League.
I don't know
But
why
I
anyone
fully
would.
understand it.
Yeah,
I fully understand it. Yeah, because you know the rules in place right now make it absolutely impossible to compete with the Sky Six. You know, like the big,
I know Man City have got
whatever
this.
you want to call it.
Yeah, I know Man City have got these 115 charges
Yeah,
on
that's
us.
what
You
people
know,
focus on.
it's a
Yeah.
separate issue from all the other stuff. If you look at, and the rules are stupid, as I say, you look at how many homegrown players they've sold for big fees. You know, they've abided by the rules in that regard because they've sold a lot of players for pure profit. And I always say this about Man City. People look at them and say, "Oh, they pick off and they buy the best players." You know, if you look at some of the places they've actually bought players from,
Mm,
you know, a lot of players from the Portuguese league who weren't household names. You know, when they bought De Bruyne, everyone was like, oh, 54 million or whatever it was.
mm,
That's way too expensive. That's a joke. If they've actually looked through their team and look at actually where they got people from and how much they spent on individuals, I know this gave us 100 million, which really helped us. But you know, they're
yeah.
not going in there and buying absolute household names for silly money. You know,
Mm,
Edison, Diaz, Bernardo Silva, they came from the Portuguese league for not huge money, and people probably raised their eyebrows when they did
mm.
that. You know, I don't think you picking on Man City. I get it because of the 115 charges, but actually from a PSR perspective, they've managed things very well.
Even like Julian Alvarez, they bought for what,
Yeah,
15 million, something silly,
exactly.
like from Argentina. Like anyone
Haaland
could have
wasn't.
gone in
Haaland
for
was
that.
50 million. I don't think it was even that. Liverpool spent 85
Yeah,
on
yeah, it
Darwin
was.
Núñez. Like, you know, they've done stuff well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can't. People like to falter them because obviously they win a lot,
Of
and whenever
course.
you win a lot, like Manchester United spend a lot of money, but people don't really get on their back. At least from my perspective, people don't get on their back because they're not as successful. But
No.
if they were more successful, I think people would try and look at them more.
Yeah, if
That's my
Arsenal have
take.
won the league, people will start looking at what they've done. You know, they've built
Yeah, yeah.
superbly over the last few years. It's just it's what happens when you win things, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. What do you make of Ian Matson? Because obviously that is the latest news, 37.5 million, I think it is. What do you think?
It's definitely easier to talk about Matson than it is to talk about Dobbin, who we've signed today. Because you know I've seen substitute appearances off the bench for the last 10 minutes
Yeah, yeah,
for Everton, but you know that's a PSR signing. What Villa have done with
yeah,
him and
yeah,
Aroban, it's a PSR workaround. I'm not sure what will happen with him, but you know Rogers came in low key and was very good. Maybe the same thing will happen with Dobbin, but Matson feels like a big signing to me. You know,
Oh,
someone.
yeah,
And talking about experience of playing in Europe, we've got very few players that have played in the Champions League previously on our books, and we're bringing in someone who's just played in a final
final.
and
Yeah,
someone who was a big part of the kind of Dortmund renaissance in the second half of the season. I wouldn't read too much into the fact that Dortmund haven't triggered their kind of option to sign him, because I'm sure they'd love to have signed him and they'd love to have signed Sancho as well, who both
yeah,
had successful loan periods, but Dortmund aren't a team that spend those kind of fees on players.
yeah,
That's not their model. So I'm sure they wanted both of those players, but it's not really how they've operated over the last few years. So I wouldn't read too much into that. I think he's a player that, you know, he's a Dutch international. He can play a couple of different positions as well. You know, we saw in Emery's Villarreal and Sevilla sides, he wasn't adverse to playing two fullbacks down the left hand side. I think signing in Matson gives us that option. He'll predominantly play left back. I think he's exactly the type of left back that Unai Emery wants. That's how he wants to play football. That's how he sees football, with a pacey, quick, skillful left back. When Moreno was on top of his game, that was a game
mhm,
changer in terms of how we built up and played football. I think that's exactly the type of pedigree of signing we should be making. You know, he's going to have resale value. I don't think he's going to go down in value as signing him. He's young. He's got decent experience already. He's come through a really strong academy at Chelsea as well, and he's got that Champions League experience, like I've said. So I think it's a signing that ticks an awful lot of boxes, and one that I'm excited about.
yeah. I mean, look, you spoke about experience and someone who got to a literal final, and I thought, I know this is talking about Villa. I thought Dortmund played very well in that final.
Yeah,
They were very
they were
unlucky.
brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, very unlucky to lose that. I felt.
Just
So
how Real Madrid games go. They fell victim in the same way that every other team that plays them
They
does, didn't they?
they
But they played
they
well.
find a way. They seem to always find a way. I get frustrated when I watch Real Madrid games because I watched them against Man City. I thought they were quite poor in that, but
Mm,
they played very defensive in a way that took them to penalties, and they won. A penalty is always a lottery anyway.
yeah,
And then completely rode their luck in the final. But Carlo Ancelotti is one of the
what he
best in the
does.
world. Yeah,
Yeah.
is what he does. Do you feel do you feel like it's Digne's time's up then? Getting a left back in. Do you feel like we're gonna stick with Moreno, or what do you think Villa are gonna do with getting in Matson?
I think in an ideal world, he'd probably stick with Moreno.
Mm,
Villa have ended up in a situation now where they've got two left backs of a similar age. One of them is on mega money that we
yeah,
obviously did
yeah.
during the Gerrard era, when the purse strings were considerably looser
Mm,
than they are now. The other one probably fits what Emery wants a little bit more, but he's had a difficult season because injuries really wreaked havoc with him last season. So I think he hasn't a pre-season for us yet, Moreno, has he? Really?
No,
He's never
he
had a
hasn't, not really.
pre-season. So I'd be really interested to see him with the pre-season. Luca Dean, I thought he was good last season. I wasn't a fan of him going into last season at all. I've got to be honest. And I thought he'd end up leaving, but he simply didn't want to leave. And then he kind of got to grips with what Emery wanted, got some assists, was a good player for us, solid player for us last season. I thought he got better defensively that last season. He'd be the preference for Villa to let go, but I don't think he'll want to go again. It's already been shown to him that if he chooses not to go, he'll probably get a fair amount of football still. He's helped Villa qualify for the Champions League. He'll want to play in the Champions League. He won't want to go to Saudi Arabia when Champions League is on the table. There's genuine interest in Moreno at the moment from his old team and in Spain in general, I believe, but particularly from
I've heard the rumours. Yeah.
They want him back, so he's the easier shift at the moment. So I think Villa would probably prefer Dean to go, but I think it will end up being Moreno. And in some ways, you could look at it two ways, couldn't you? But one of the ways you can look at that is gives us two different left backs. They both do different things. Luca Dean's a stand and deliver left back, whereas Matsson's one that will bomb on and be adventurous and get really far forward. So maybe that variety in the squad would be better, but I think Villa would prefer to have him and Moreno, definitely.
Yeah, I think it would be a little bit of a shame to let Moreno go. Like you said, we've not really had a proper pre-season. It's been one of the few signings that Unai's actually made. So to see him go so soon, I think it would be a little bit of a shame. I do understand, we have the PSR issues that we have, and if we, Digne's wages from a financial point of view, obviously it would be better to let him go, but it's not going to be super easy because, like, you got to think as well. Teams will probably have to match that, or at least get close to matching his wages. Will teams want to do that? And Digne's getting on a bit now, so that's
Yeah,
like another issue as well.
Yeah, it's not great, obviously, to have ended up in the position with two left backs of a similar profile, of a similar age, but we are where we are. One of them will go because they'll both know that actually they've just signed another left back for 36, 37 million. So he's going to play the big games. He's going to be the first choice. They're both going to know that. But I do think it'll end up being Moreno. I think Luca Dean wants to stay, is what I've been told.
Yeah, I think the club have an idea what they want to do, because if you make a big signing like Maatsen, you have to have a game plan. So they all probably already know what they're going to do anyway, and we're just going to have to find out. That's the way
also
I look at it.
they've obviously got this thing going on with Chelsea at the moment where I don't think this will be the end of business between Villa and Chelsea.
No.
I think we'll see a couple of different things going on with Villa and Chelsea in what day is it today? Yeah, in the next week.
Yeah, I mean, the rumor I saw the last couple of days, Kellyman for like 19 million. I mean, we're going to be seeing, like you said, we'll be seeing a lot of these.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? But
yeah,
again,
good value for money though. Very good value for money.
I can see why the club are doing that. Chelsea have got kind of two transfer spheres going on at the moment. They've got something called Project 2030 or something that they've got going on, where they're signing a lot of young players, which is something they've done a lot of over the last 12 to 18 months, as well as the players that they've signed for the first team. It's not dissimilar to the Chukwuemeka deal, although Chukwuemeka was running out of contract, whereas Kellyman isn't at the moment. So he probably holds more value because he's actually just signed a new contract.
Yeah,
hasn't he, Kellyman? I did a stream the other day, and it was like I just with Jacob, and we both knew about this Kellyman stuff, but neither of us could say anything about it. So we had to do a podcast and kind of skirt around it and kind of say it without saying it. But I do think the club are doing well, because you're losing a player for £19 million who has never really kicked a ball.
That's what I mean. That's why I say it's good value.
It's the lesser of two evils, isn't it? To bring money in. We're living in a world where if we didn't do something like that, we'd probably have to sell someone in the first team that we really don't want to sell. The Douglas Luiz is separate because there's been an offer on the table for 6 months, and that's genuinely true. He hasn't signed a contract. I think he loves Villa and he loves being at Villa, but he's open to leaving, and he's showing that by not signing the contract. Villa have been very good at signing players up over the last 3-4 seasons. When they've got to 2 years, 18 months of the contract, they've got a new one and signed up long term when they've done well. Cash, McGinn, Konsa, Watkins, Mings, Martinez. Over the last 3 seasons, they've all had new contracts when they've got to within within that kind of time frame. So Villa have tried to do it again. They did it with Dougie once already. You know, they're trying to do it again with Dougie. There's a release clause in his contract as well, which makes Villa vulnerable to that. So they've obviously made a decision to alleviate PSR fears. It makes sense to sell Luiz, but then there's still a hole to make up, and it's better to make that hole up with Kellyman than it is to make it up with a genuine first teamer, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the Luiz transfer saga, which seems like it's never ending. Like we've heard about this whole thing with Juventus for a while. Like initially, it was Weston McKennie that was supposed to be lined
Yeah,
up, and now
doesn't fancy it.
he didn't fancy it. What do you make of it, of that whole situation? Obviously, PSR is like the the main headline covering all this.
Yeah, if it wasn't for PSR, I'm not sure Villa would
I don't
sell
think we
him,
would.
or
Yeah.
if they did, it would be for a hell of a lot more money, and other teams would have more money to spend, which means Douglas Luiz would probably go elsewhere for a flat out transfer fee that's more to his value. Because of PSR, we're in this situation where you're almost trying to cook the books, and we're having to work with player exchanges. Because the difficult thing is, the Premier League is very wealthy, but teams are hamstrung because of PSR. The other leagues now aren't as wealthy, and they're hamstrung by PSR. So outside of the Premier League, you've got probably Real Madrid, Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich that have got money. No one else really is as flush as Premier League teams. So no disrespect, but a team like Bournemouth, they'll have a transfer budget that's probably of a similar size to Juventus, AC Milan. Now, that's not the way the world was previously, but it's the way the world is now. So Villa haven't got loads of suitors for Douglas Luiz. If it wasn't for PSR, I think they probably would have loads of suitors for Douglas Luiz. So they're working with what they've got, in that he's the one that makes the most sense to sell. Where's the interest? Well, it's at a team that are a bit hamstrung themselves, haven't got loads of money. Who's on their books that Emery thinks can make a difference? And it's important to say that no one will come into this football club that Emery doesn't want or doesn't think that he can work with. So he'll have given the players that come the other way the okay. So Emery was okay with McKenna. Emery's going to be okay with Ealing Jr. and completely the other guy who is coming out, the Argentinian with the really long name that I can't say or remember.
It begins with a B. That's all I remember.
Those two will have had sign off from Unai Emery. Villa have obviously got Barkley, who's coming in as well, and that'll be done on July the 1st. They're having to wait to do that because of PSR Villa's end, I believe, and it's something to do with Luton as well, and Barkley's contract that they need to wait till July. But that's all done. He just hasn't been signed off yet, but he will come in as well. And I know that he's a player that Emery is very excited to get through the door. Rodgers, believe it or not, was a signing that Emery pushed for. It wasn't someone that was identified and came to him and, do you want this player? It was Emery saying to the club, I want this player. This is who I want. And it's the same with Barkley. Unai Emery has identified him as someone he really thinks he can work with. And if you look at Emery's teams over the years, he's kind of always had that age profile of player in his squad, someone who's maybe turned into a bit of a journeyman that's gone and worked with Emery and become a world beater in knockout football in the Champions League. I think Villa had like Coquelin and Capoue playing in their midfield at one point, and they're getting to the Champions League semi-final. So Barkley is Emery's man. Emery really, really wants him and really rates him and thinks he can make him even better.
There is some skepticism because we had Barkley previously, and his work rate was one of the things that was targeted by supporters. How do you feel it'll be different now? His lackluster time he was here last time.
I think he started well, didn't he? And then injuries absolutely.
He started well.
Injury killed him, and he never came back the same player as he was when he first arrived. I think there's probably two things here that he's going to be playing in a different position to what he was playing when he was at Villa previously. He's kind of evolved his game. I think he realised that his career is short, and he's 30, 31 now. I haven't got much time left. I've maybe not worked as hard as I should, not looked after myself as much as I should have done off the field. I think it suddenly clicked for Ross Barkley, and he was brilliant for Luton. If you look at his metrics playing as a number 6, everything you would want to see physically. I think he's using his physical presence now more than he was when he was at Villa, and I'm sure the way Villa play will evolve from last season, just like it did from last season to the half a season before. But Villa don't run, don't press.
No, we don't. We don't press. Aren't we the lowest pressers in the Premier League?
I think we were second from bottom potentially, but we work smarter, not harder, would be how I would describe how Villa play off the ball. So he's not going to have to do all those things. So I think you've got to look at him as being, one, Villa are a totally different football club to the last time Ross Barkley was there.
That is true. Yeah.
Two, this is a totally different Ross Barkley to the Ross Barkley that we had in 2020, 21.
Yeah, it would
a
have
lot
been
of times passed since then. He was one of the players of the season in the Premier League last year. If you look at where he was playing and what he was doing, he was one of the players of the season in the Premier League.
Yeah, he did stand out in that Luton team, and that's not easy to do.
I didn't recognise him some of the games. I couldn't remind myself that it was Ross Barkley. He's a completely different player playing as a number 6.
Yeah, and I mean, I heard shouts for him. Like some people wanted him in the England team.
Yeah,
Like
because he was doing what he was doing well.
Yeah. So hopefully we get to see more of that at Aston Villa.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. What are any signings realistically that you would make as of right now? Obviously PSR and all that, but is there anyone that you've looked at as a realistic transfer for Aston Villa?
I mean, I think anyone who's watching the Euros would say Nico Williams. At the moment, looks absolutely unplayable for Spain. I actually said before the tournament started, I don't think enough people are talking about Spain as potential winners here. Look at 2 lads they've got on the wing, and flanking Morata, who I actually think is a really useful centre forward. I've always quite liked Morata.
He gets a lot of stick, Morata.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, like they make jokes that people buy him for trade money or whatever the hell they want to call it.
Well,
but he's playing for top teams throughout his whole career, and you do that for a reason. And
he's similar to Giroud in my mind.
Yeah.
Very, very, very underrated. Very underrated centre forward for what he does in terms of link up play. He misses chances. Look, I can't deny that, but his link up play. But anyway, those 2 flanking him have been incredible, and they've got a nice little midfield balance as well.
I was going to say they're a very balanced team, aren't they? Like they've got a lot of pace. They've got a lot of good passes in their team. Yeah.
I had a bet on them to win the Euros, but unfortunately, I combined it with an Mbappe Golden Boot shout, which hasn't that bit doesn't look too great with it. But we'll see how the tournament develops. Hopefully, Mbappe can score a hat trick against someone that's not England as the tournament goes on. But he's someone that Villa have tried to sign previously.
Yeah.
Emery wanted him famously over Diaby, so it's interesting because if he'd have come in, he'd have been playing as the second striker, which isn't where he plays for Bilbao and isn't where he plays for Spain. But the problem is that Basque players are fiercely loyal to Bilbao. He's got a reasonable, in this market, or in this day and age, really, his release fee is not completely over the top, is it? You'd probably say it's quite fair. I think he could actually play as a centre forward as well, and I think Duran's going to depart. I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes with John Duran. I think we need an alternative to Watkins that can also play in the same 11 as Watkins. Maybe that's Williams. Maybe it's not. That's the type of player I think we need, because it's very hard to just get a centre forward that's happy to be back up to someone. There's still a lot of links to Abraham, which I would not be adverse to.
I've heard links with Abraham for like 4 years. In all fairness,
but again, we were going to sign him 12 months ago. That was it was quite far down the line, and then he got injured. But the bit with that would surprise me is he himself will know that Watkins would start over him. I'm not sure he's got I'm not sure he'd want to come in as a backup. So it would surprise me if he did choose to come, because I don't see him as being someone that would be happy being a backup. But you never know. I think right back is when you've only got one right back on the books, then we can all agree Conte's best position is centre back.
Yeah.
A right back needs to come into the squad as well. But I think Louise will be replaced by a multitude of players by the looks of things, and you've got to remember as well, I think Tielemans got better as the season went on. I absolutely love Yuri Tielemans. I think he scored last night as well.
He was my favourite midfielder throughout the season.
Second half of the season, he was our best. Yeah. He was one of our best performers. He's such a good footballer, such a pure, talented footballer, technical. His passing brilliant. He loses the ball sometimes, but it's because he's trying things. He sees passes that other players don't see. And as the season went on, he became more and more important. And he missed a few games towards the end of the season, and you really, really noticed it when he wasn't there.
He missed the Olympiacos games, and I feel like that was a huge miss.
Clever footballer, clever footballer. He's going to be better next season as well. So Villa with him, Barkley, McGinn can obviously play there sometimes as well. Kamara will be coming back. We've got this other guy from Juve. There'll be a lot of different options in that midfield. So it's going to be interesting how the season starts.
Yeah. My very final question to you, and it's been absolutely lovely talking to you.
Lovely
And it'll
talking to
be,
you, mate.
how do you think England will do in the Euros? Obviously, we've had a
God,
pretty poor start. How do you think do you think we'll limp out the group? Maybe make it to a quarter final? What do you think?
at the start of this tournament, and again, these are things that I've said every now and again. I get things right, and I've got a couple of things right with England. I get a lot wrong as well, by the way. But I did. I made a couple of good calls on Talksport going into this Euro. So this was in Qatar. I fancied us to win it. I really,
Mm,
really did. In the Euros before, I actually predicted that we get to the final and lose on penalties to Italy, and we did. So I'm quite good with my England predictions actually, except for
yeah.
Qatar because obviously we didn't win it. We got knocked down the quarters, but I thought we were unlucky in Qatar because I thought we played really well in that game against France.
I thought actually we were a better team,
Yeah, I
arguably
thought
in
Saka
that
was
game.
brilliant that night. Yeah, we were really
Yeah.
good. This tournament, I've not had the same good feeling
No.
going into it. I think left back's a massive problem that's affecting the whole team, and I think that's one of the reasons we're struggling. Because if you're going to play Kieran Trippier at left back, which I get, because Luke Shaw's
Fulham
not
just
fit,
yeah.
you didn't trust any of the other left backs, which I understand because I thought Chilwell was horrific in the two friendly games in the lead up to it, and he never
Mm,
stays fit anyway himself. So I understand Trippier playing left back, and it is what it is. But if you're playing Trippier left back, you have to play someone on the left that can hold width. That's not Foden. So you
yeah.
want to work Foden into the team. I completely understand that. And if you had Luke Shaw, Foden playing left would not be a problem. But I think Anthony Gordon is almost must start if you've got Kieran Trippier at left back. And I don't think you've got
Yeah.
anyone else that can play left back. To be perfectly honest, in the squad. So he's going to have to make changes in this next game. There's going to be a couple of changes. I think Mainu will come in for Trent, and I think he's got to do something with that left hand side. Trippier's going to
Yeah.
play. He's going to play. So you're going to have to. You have to play Gordon, in my opinion. You have to. And they've got a
Yeah.
relationship as well because they're both at Newcastle. I think if he makes those couple of changes, even if he just makes that one change, I think we're a much better team. Then you haven't got Foden in the team, but what you have got then is, well, on the right hand side, we can play Foden or Saka here against
Mm,
different opposition. And I thought that was what he'd do with central midfield. I thought maybe one game Trent would play, one game Mainu would play, and you pick different players for different games. And he still might do that, but I think he's been forced to make changes now because we've not been good in the first two games.
well,
And I've always been a big supporter of Southgate,
yeah.
but I can't support that last game. We were terrible against Denmark.
Oh yeah, easily the second best team in that game for the whole game.
Oh,
We're
really drab.
very lopsided.
And that's that left
It,
hand side.
yeah, it is. And even when you look at the good things Phil Foden did, he was in central positions where he's coming over from the left, which means we have a complete non-existent left-hand side. It would make sense to have an out-and-out winger like an Anthony Gordon there to try and have more width.
Yeah, he's got to
My
play.
what I personally do is drop Foden entirely, bring Kobbie Mainoo in for Trent, and have Bellingham as a 10. I know some people want to see Bellingham a bit further back, but I think Bellingham can offer a bit more to England, going forward in forward positions like he did for Real Madrid throughout the whole season.
Mm,
He played in more an advanced role. That's something I would do. I think the Trent thing has to stop. Like, surely
yeah.
you agree on that? Like, I don't know why he's trialing things out in the group. We've had 2 years to sort out a tournament, and he's testing things now. I don't really understand that either.
I kind of
Yeah,
think, I don't know why you said that because he has played Trent in midfield in the lead up to
yeah,
this. We have
yeah.
friendlies where he's played there in other games. But I don't think Trent's the problem. I think the
Mm,
system isn't getting the best out of him because there's nothing going on in front of him.
no,
The stuff he's good at, he's not getting to do because there's nothing going on ahead of him. It's very, very static at the moment.
yeah.
I think Anthony Gordon would change this tournament for England.
Oh yeah, I
In my
agree.
opinion, he's been brilliant for Newcastle. Well, I wasn't sure of that move when it happened, but Gordon has been brilliant for England. But unfortunately, looking at it, he hasn't come on yet. Palmer hasn't come on either. I just don't
That's
think if
ridiculous.
he
I
makes
think
changes, I don't think it will be them two. But I do think Mainu will come in the midfield, and maybe that will make things a little bit better. But I honestly don't think Trent's the problem. I think everything is stemming from left back, and then he's trying to fit Foden in somewhere, which again I get and wouldn't be a problem if we had a left back, but we haven't, so it's a problem.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, there's just loads of issues, and I do think the main one is the left side. It's just that simple.
Yeah, we'll still top the group.
Um,
We'll win on Tuesday. We'll still top the group, but you're going to
yeah,
think looking at it, we'd come up against France in the semis.
Well, it's looking like Austria in the next round. I don't even think we beat them right now. That's like the expected
Mm,
team that we're going to play now.
yeah, it'd be a
I think they're
struggle.
looking very good. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we are in lots of trouble.
I'm not as
Maybe,
confident as I have been in previous tournaments, that's for sure. Even before the tournament, but definitely not now.
mm, yeah, maybe Ollie Watkins can help us a little bit.
Look good when he came on.
He did look very good.
He cost me
Within a
some money
minute,
though.
made a run. Oh,
Yeah,
he cost you money.
well, I made a bet that a bet that came. I mean, I sound like I'm obsessed with betting on this show, and I'm not at all. I just do the odd one for England games. Really, I don't really do it for anything else. But I've done it for the Euros. But there was a bet for Kane or Bellingham to score 1-1. So it doubled I put a tenner on it, doubled my money, 20 quid. As soon as Watkins came on, I just put £20 on him to score the next goal because he was 10-1. And obviously
Yeah,
he went through, didn't he? And he looked good when he came on, Watkins.
he did. He did.
He looked good. Suddenly there was a bit of movement just because that's his game, isn't there? And people are
Yeah.
going to talk about dropping Kane, but you're not. I love Ola. I think he's one of the best strikers Villa have ever had.
You're not going to drop Kane.
You're not dropping Kane.
Yeah,
Come
you're
on.
not. Yeah.
Kane's the best forward in the world, in my opinion. You're just not going to drop Harry Kane. So Watkins,
The
you're gonna have to do
system
his stuff
doesn't
from the
suit
bench.
him though. I
No,
will say that the
it
system
doesn't
does not
suit
suit
Watkins
him.
when he plays either. When he started, he
No.
hasn't got the best out of
Yeah.
him either. So there's something wrong somewhere, isn't there, at the moment?
Yeah, look, hopefully it's coming home, but I do very much doubt it. Look,
No,
mate, it's been absolutely lovely having you on here. I've really enjoyed this. Is there anything you want to shout out before we end this?
no, nothing for me. As I said, I think people are probably
Oh, they
sick
probably
of
know
me.
who you are.
They're probably sick of me at this point. If I do anything, I make it known on social media, so people
Yeah.
will probably see it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining me, and it's been lovely talking to you.
Mate, lovely to talk to you any time.